So I'm just going to dive straight in now. The first thing that we did is that we changed out, if you're using your computer, the webcam on your computer to shoot video, then you want to change that and you want to change it to an external webcam. Now the gold standard is the Logitech C90 Brio. They are very high quality, but however, after a bit of research, instead we opted for a Papalook AF925. Now it's a little less expensive, but still very high quality. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go for a 1080p resolution. That gives a clarity to your recordings. You're also going to want to buy a tripod. We've got our tripod set up behind our computer. It's about 24 inches tall, and the laptop sitting on a desk and the tripod sitting on top of the desk as well. So it's shooting down at about 30 degrees. Now, the reason you want to do this is because if you see any live broadcasting, then they do shoot down, and that's the most professional look. Now, once you've set up your webcam, you've plugged it into your computer, and you've set that as your preferred option for recording, then you're probably going to want to buy a USB microphone. Now, podcasters, they like the Rode or the Blue Yeti. That gives the best quality of sound. However, because this is a live broadcast, because this is a video, we've got a clip-on lavalier mic. Now, the one we're using is fairly good value for money. It's a Movo MB1 USB microphone. And the reason we bought it is because it has about a 15 or 20 foot lead. The reason you want a long lead is because you might want to present standing out, and in that case you'd have to be standing on the other side of the room. So the first thing you want to do, no matter what you intend to do with your presentations, is change out your webcam and change out your microphone. Makes an enormous difference. Now, why would you want to make movies? Well, there are 4 reasons, the acronym PTSD. The first reason is you might want to make a product. If you've got a level of expertise and a knowledge, then the way to go is to make in-person video training. Video training is taking over the world. That's the way that all training is heading. Now, in-person training, residential training still has its place, but the advantage of video training is that it's 24/7 and you can pause, rewind and replay. You may or may not know this, but the second most used search engine isn't Bing, it's Google's YouTube. And yes, YouTube is owned by Google. The T stands for training. Now, over the last 12 months, just a huge amount of people have had to start working from home. Now, as the pandemic subsides, the move to home working is going to become permanent in some cases, and certainly people will start to look to work maybe Friday and Mondays from home, and maybe only go into the office a few days a week. Now, if you're going to do that, then one of the things you might consider is investing in a home studio. Just one reason might be that your employer might require you to make in-person training, and they want to brand it with a corporate image, corporate look and feel. They want a certain quality. Sales. Now, if you've looked through our website at all, on the front page you'll notice an animated video. Now, we work with a very good animator. Can't recommend them highly enough, but it was quite a long process. It took 2 or 3 weeks to get that animated video over the line. A lot of going backwards and forwards, a lot of online meetings, And if I wanted to change something, then, you know, I had to email my animator and then they would come back. And then when the eventual product came back, I then edited it down from the 3 minutes to the 1 minute. And the whole process cost, it was £300 or £400, something, $300 or $400. Now, you know, that's still good value, but these talking head videos are cheaper, and also you've got much more control over the end product. You can re-record it if you want to, if you're not happy with the result. Now, the final reason is documentation. Now, documentation, this isn't obvious, but I think, a Greek called Seneca, I think 1st, 2nd century BC, and this quote is attributed to him, still true today, that the person who learns the most in any teaching or training situation is always the teacher or the trainer. If you're not fortunate enough to have victims to practice upon, then there's nothing to stop you recording your home video sessions and just viewing your own performance with a critical eye. Now, I mean, I will freely admit that the first time we did this, I was shocked at how poor I was. And still today, I know that this is there are people. This is a talent, but you can certainly no practice. There's no practice that doesn't improve with practice, and you can improve over time. I think I mentioned in our opening video that the informal chats, these unscripted chats, are my Achilles heel. I think I referenced God in 60 Seconds, said this is my, and then all, well, the reason we're a bit more fluent here is because this is a green screen and I'm surrounded by props, and that's a little tip or trick that you might want to incorporate into when you make your own videos, because we've tried with scripting, we've tried with auto cues, and I found that difficult, found that awkward. I found that you got a certain tone of voice, it does sound like you're reading the phone book. There's no, unless you're an exceptionally talented actor, it's difficult to fake authenticity. So if you want to be spontaneous, be spontaneous. So let's jump back into making green screen videos, setting up a home studio. Now, you've got your webcam, it has to be 1080p, whatever you choose. That's a must. And you've got your microphone. Now, that doesn't have to cost a fortune, but maybe you'd spend up to $100. It's probably a wise investment. One of the things I didn't realize when making these videos was how important lights are. So wherever you are, if this is maybe you've got maybe you've assigned an unused office to as your home studio. Maybe it's a spare room and you've converted that into a home studio. Then the first thing you'll want to do is you're going to want to buy some lighting. Now, one very inexpensive, one very cheap trick or tip that you can use is the first thing we did was we changed the bulb. We stripped out the lampshade and we changed the bulb for a daylight bulb. Now, a daylight bulb has a very high, called a CRI. You might want to write that down. Anything over 90 is what you're looking for. Now, that bulb, if you sit directly underneath it, also acts as a halo light. So that's one light. Now, unfortunately, you're not done yet. Now, we've got a 3-point lighting system. So we've got the overhead light and we've got 2 more lights, one to our right and one to our left. Now, the light to our right is it's a ring light, fairly inexpensive. You can buy these off Amazon. You can buy these off eBay. This was tremendous value. This is sitting on a 4-foot stand, and it's about an 18-inch ring light with, again, a very high CRI. Now this came with some accessories. One of the accessories it came with was a holder for a iPhone. Now, you may or may not know this, but an iPhone can be used as a second webcam or your main webcam. If you purchase, I think the app is called OBS Camera. It's about £17, and obviously the iPhone cameras, they are incredibly good quality. Now, personally, we find a bit more quality with the Papalook AF925, but we're still experimenting with this. So you've got your two lights. Now, obviously, to our right, the second light, didn't mention this, is the USB desk lamp. Now, again, this got a high CRI, and both of these lights, they're about sitting about 30 degrees, one to my right, one to my left, and they're illuminating the subject view. So you've got three lights on the subject, one overhead, one to the right, one to the left. That's a 3-point lighting system. Now there's one other light, this is very important, and this is a Relino bank light. This is our most expensive light. This throws out quite a bit of light. Now, its sole purpose is to light the green screen. Now, you can't see the green screen behind us because we've already merged in the background, but it is there, trust me. Now, you can spend quite a lot of money on these green screen kits, but in our case, we've gone for a much simpler, cheaper option. We've got a pop-up stand which stands about 6 foot tall and it's about 3.5 feet wide. Now our particular one is black and white because I wanted to film in front of white screens, I wanted to film in front of black screens just to block out the background. But obviously, because this is green screen, you need a green screen, so you're also going to need to buy some chroma green material. Now you can clip that onto that stand. I happened to buy a job lot of microphones, and I stripped out the Bulldog clips and used that to clip on some unused microphones. I used that to clip the green screen material onto the stand, and you've got your basic home studio setup. That's about it. There's one further piece of the equation, and that's you can record this onto your computer and you can edit this in post-production if you want. However, I would recommend against that. But we've tried that, and there are certain issues. If you are, let's say you edit all this, and then when you look back, you start to see shadows, and they can be an absolute nightmare to edit out. You might, if you haven't got the lighting quite right, you might have to start over, which can be frustrating if you've just recorded for 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour. So instead, we would recommend a free piece of software. This is excellent. It's called OBS. I think it began with gamers. It's open broadcasting software. Now, the advantage of this is that it allows you to feed your video straight through OBS, and OBS has certain filters. Those filters, one of the filters is the chroma green screen. We've also pulled in our background, which we purchased as a set, which we purchased from Virtual Studios. And this is a live broadcast. We've also we've got a cropping filter, which allows us to narrow down the camera's width of view, so that it's just including me and the screen behind me, and not everything in the room. Allows us to narrow down the focus to just me. And we have a light filter, or a LUT. Now, why would you need a LUT, I hear you ask? Well, we said you can't have it. One of the golden rules is you can't have enough lights, and they can't be bright enough. Well, that's true. Unfortunately, when all these lights are on you, you become overexposed, and somehow you've got to find a way of bringing that light back down. Now, one of the ways is to use a cinema LUT. That brings back the skin tones back to a fairly normal level. Red isolated. In this particular case, we're using a teal and orange. Now, you might have to go online and look for these a bit. They might be free, they might be fairly inexpensive, but it is worth it for the end result. We've also have some sound filters in. Now, I said we've got a good microphone, a Movo, a condenser microphone, but we've also, on that, we've got a noise, because we're sitting some distance away from the camera to improve the results, because you have to be about 4 feet away from the camera and about 3 feet away from the background in order to get the best results for green screening. But that causes issues with the sound, especially if it's going straight through your camera or it's feeding straight into your computer. Now, in this case, we're feeding it straight through a lavalier mic, but we've got a noise suppression, a noise gate, we've got a graphic equalizer, and we've got a compressor, just so that the less you have to do in post-production, the easier your life's going to be. Now, that just about wraps it up for setting up your home studio. Now, I did promise at the start we'd talk a little bit about presenting, because I said you have an option, you can get an auto cue. We found that awkward. It's also it's difficult to pace it. There's a rhythm and a tone, almost a musical quality, and if you're going to make a video that lasts any length of time, then it has to be conversational, and it's difficult to script something that sounds natural. So there are some rules for presentation. Now, there's 9 of these, and I'm just going to skip through them very quickly, because I say this is a video. You can pause, rewind, replay. You can if you want to skip back over these and make a note of them, then feel free. Now, the first rule is that you need to learn to speak from the heart. The second rule is you need to tell stories. The third rule is you need to work on your delivery. Practice, no substitute for practice. This isn't our first talking head video. This must be 300 or 400 attempts just to get to this stage. It took that long for me to realise that this is not as easy as it appears to be. You might want to look at your rhythm, tone, your cadence, the language you use. You want to introduce something new. The late, great Steve Jobs, well, he would always show rather than tell. He became famous for his Apple product unveilings. They became an event in themselves. It's much more impactful. You want to use humour, you want to avoid jokes, something from your own personal backstory that connects you with your audience more than a joke. You want to be aware of the laws of attention. Now, there's a famous rule, it's called Miller's magic number 7. It means that we can internalize 7 new pieces of information. We can juggle those before we start to, well, it's plus or minus 2. The superstars out there can hold 9 pieces of information. And if you're distractible, then it's down to 5. But the reality is, with lots of distractions, it's probably closer to 3. Your presentation shouldn't last more than 18 minutes. After 18 minutes, people lose the will to live. You should use multimedia. Now, only a fool believes that their audience are hanging on their every word. It's a scientific fact, a proven fact, that imagery persists far longer than words. And finally, you should stay in your lane.